Hey everyone, I'm Payton, and this is my portfolio 4. Before I get into the actual pieces, I want to talk about kind of my thesis, so to speak. I've painted a lot of portraits throughout this quarter, and for this one, I just wanted to focus on everything else besides the portrait. I mean, the portrait is still a very important part of the piece, it's pretty much the focal point, but I really wanted to push the envelope in terms of the color blocking and geometry I'm used to using. I use a lot of lines before, but I've never really taken it as far as that simply. So I really wanted to kind of see what I could come up with and push it further and try to come up with a more distinct style and experiment with that a little bit more. So, with that said, I developed these 4 pieces that I'm pretty proud of. Uh, I came up or used rather 2 techniques. Here you can see on the left side, I kind of used this radiating color technique or repeating, the shape of the subjects and using different colors to create contrast. And then here on the right, I decided to just throw in some blatant geometry here and use some triangles and tessellation, and I think they turn out really nice. So I wanted to go through each piece and just talk about it and my inspirations and stuff like that. So the first piece is of Carmen. They are a musical duo and they inspire my artwork a lot through their music. Here I am using a lot of bright colors because I wanted to really, translate their bright, fun personality in music within the piece. This is a 12 by 12, so it's harder to get detail in the faces, or it was harder to, especially since there's 2 people here. But I managed, and I'm quite happy with how they turned out. I'm also really happy with my execution of the clothing, especially the blue blazer there. I really like that. So my next piece is of Shailene Woodley, who is an actress and an activist who I look up to a lot. And here was where I tried a technique I've never used before with the triangles. And I can see myself using it in the future. So it all came from Shailene Woodley's background, I guess you could say. She works a lot with the Native American community, and the triangles kind of pay homage and nod to like Navajo and Native American quilt patterns. The portrait itself, I'm not the most keen on. I mean, it's finished and, I like it, but I don't feel personally satisfied with the face fully. And I know that the color choices may look somewhat random, but I actually found myself, funny enough, repainting some of the triangles because sometimes they just didn't look right or it threw the piece off. This is the final product of that experiment, I guess, and I really like it. I think that overlapping the triangles as well adds another sense of depth, and it almost looks like there's frosted glass over her or something like that. You can barely just see blocks of color. So on to my next piece, we have Jessie J. I actually painted her in the first portfolio, but I wanted to do a full color piece of her because she's a huge inspiration to me as not only a person but an artist. I went back to my first technique of kind of radiating color because I didn't think the triangle method or lines or anything else would really suit this piece personally. Out of all of my 4 pieces, I think this is one of my strongest ones. I think that the patterns and the clothing and the face especially is something I'm really proud of. Speaking of the color, actually, in the background, I went through many trials to see what colors worked. I went through oranges and greens, but I ended up with these 3 colors. And I was actually inspired by the work of Roy Lichtenstein and his use of simple color palettes and just, comic books overall. But the colors, if you can squint, they actually match the colors of her nails. So I know it's very subtle, but if you notice it, then I think it brings the piece all together. So last but not least, we have the queen herself of 2006, Fergie. So Fergie is probably the first female artist I ever looked up to as a kid. But onto the portrait, I actually really didn't like this portrait when I was painting it. but I tend to judge my work a little too much before it's finished. Ironically, it's actually, I think, my favorite out of all four. And I say that because of the hair. I really like the work of the hair. I also use this triangle method again here. However, they're a little bigger than the Shailene Woodley one. And I also didn't, um, vary the sizes. So they're all the same size. I think it has an interesting effect. Um, Overall, this has like a very glamorous, aesthetic to it, which is what I was really striving for. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with all the work that I produced. And thank you for listening to my presentation. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. So, yeah, thank you so much.